Hi everyone, I'm Richard, and joining me today is John Linneman.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. So today I decided I wanted to give No Man's Sky a shot. Obviously there were a lot of issues with the PC build on Friday. I downloaded the experimental build, slapped it onto the PC, Titan X 4K 60 FPS max, and yeah, what I've done here, I did see online that people were complaining about the stutter, and there was a suggestion to let the game run with VSync off and with max frame rate, and to use Nvidia's adaptive VSync, and that's what I'm doing here. So this is why the frame rate is at 59.9 and 60 FPS.
I wanted to chime in on this real quick. I'm using a GTX 970 right here. And my performance has not been great, even using those suggestions. I can get a generally sustained level of 60 frames per second, but the stuttering issue continues to plague my game pretty consistently.
Wow, that's pretty poor. Well, here we are on the video. I'm looking at our settings that I've got here, and it's basically everything on maximum, 3840 by 2160. I'm not sure whether the settings fully work. I mean, the anti-aliasing is bizarre. Well, you can see in the corner there the memory footprint is on 4,222 megabytes. Doesn't matter if I'm on anti-aliasing off, FXAA or SSAA 4X. With the super sampling, with super sampling you would expect an enormous footprint. I mean, I'm assuming that I would be at like 8K internal native rendering resolution here, and it just isn't doing anything, isn't making any kind of difference at all.
Yeah, and it should really go up, shouldn't it, with SSAA?
And actually, when I first played this on the initial version, well, I don't know what was happening, because I was at 1440p with super sampling, and it kind of still looks like 1080 to me, and it looks really poor. Now, once I had the experimental beta installed, then things kind of looked up, and I am actually getting native 4K resolution here. But there's something still really bizarre going on with this game.
Now, to your point about the experimental thing, I also noticed that as well when I first started it up. It did appear to be running at native 1080p for me, even at 1440.
Yeah.
And I installed the experimental build as you suggested, and sure enough, it is now outputting at 1440p, but it also runs significantly worse.
Well, that kind of possibly makes sense if you're actually at native 1440p this time, because you're rendering at a higher resolution.
Yes, exactly.
But it does seem to indicate that something's just sort of wasn't quite right at launch, and it's still not right now.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, if we return to the gameplay feed here, it's basically a truncated edit of about an hour and a half's worth of gameplay, and mercifully I'm cutting it short, because what you're seeing here is just a bunch of mining and resource collection, and it's okay to play for the first time, but to watch it's incredibly dull. So
yeah, I'm curious to see how this fares with the big Let's Players, if they're doing like hour and multi-hour videos of No Man's Sky where you're kind of doing the same thing for days.
Yeah, it's not good to watch. I mean, I kind of there is a definite sense of discovery to it that I kind of find quite appealing, and I love the art style. In many ways, it reminds me of those Ralph McQuarrie concept arts for Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the kind of angular style and the spaceships in particular, and it really looks beautiful in many ways.
It really does. It has a very nice look to it, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been on like maybe 4 or 5 different planets, and there is a degree of variety here, and I love the way, like, as you can see here, there's kind of whole sort of subterranean elements to it.
Oh, yeah.
So I suspect that there is a lot to this game. I mean, I actually did another cut there. This is where we get the Heridium, which it actually seems to make you want to trek 5 or 10 minutes away from the ship to get that kind of last bit of material that you need to get off the planet.
Now, see, there's a pro tip there. As somebody pointed out to me, if you use your melee attack in combination with the jetpack, you can launch yourself across the terrain and get across there a lot faster. It's quite fun, I gotta say.
It doesn't sound quite like it was what the developer intended, but I think that's actually one of the things that I really like about this game, is that it's so freeform.
Right.
That there are going to be these kind of NMS life hacks, that you might call them, sort of bizarre shortcuts that I don't think the developers actually ever intended to do.
Now, weirdly enough, another thing about it is it's a big game, right? But it doesn't feel overwhelming to me in the way, like, you load up something like an Assassin's Creed game and you're just presented with this enormous map full of icons, and I just sort of freeze up when I see that. Like, what do I do next? But here it's like it still manages to feel manageable and interesting enough by the fact that it's not so overloaded with stuff to do.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think what's interesting is that it's as big as you want it to be. I mean, you know, that first planet, for example, I was on there for like, I don't know, half an hour max, probably less. And because I had played the initial element of the game before, so I knew what to do. But, you know, in terms of the actual geography, there's a whole planet to explore there, and, you know, I wandered about in a very short sort of radius, so there wasn't really, you know, it was as big as I wanted it to be. I know some guys are just staying on the first planet and really grinding the hell out of it. It's not for me, but
no.
It's basically an option, and you know, once you get off the planet, here we are back in outer space here. I think at the moment, what am I doing? Yeah, basically I'm charging the pulse engine. First time I played this game and got off the planet, I just didn't charge the pulse engine at all. It took me like half an hour to get to the place, to get to the space station.
See, I did that as well, which led me to think like, gee, this is really just is desert bus in space. Like, you're just flying straight forward forever, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess I didn't quite do that right.
I was kind of reminded of Elite, where, you know, it really pushes you to play in a kind of realistic manner.
Oh yeah,
and it's kind of, well, space is a really big place. Of course, it's gonna take a long time to move from A to B. But then there's the pulse drive, which we've got here, and yeah, you can just zoom about left, right, and centre with no problem at all. And yeah, here we are. I'm arriving at my first space station here, which. It's kind of interesting. It's not the best one that I found. The first
No, not at all.
The first time I played this, I just hung about in the hangar for like 5 or 10 minutes because the spaceships were just coming in thick and fast. They were just, you know, all of the landing points were occupied, ships coming in and out, and it's kind of like a kind of almost, well, there is, I guess, an infinite variety of different craft. So, you know, again, it's kind of just how big is this game, and how well it all kind of hangs together, bearing in mind it is the product of mathematical algorithms.
Sure, and you know what? Those have actually resulted in some surprisingly interesting moments for me. I landed on one planet where the conditions were such that my life support couldn't sustain my life for a very long period of time, so it felt like you were kind of having to jump between save points and constantly watch yourself just to get across the surface, and it kind of lent sort of a thrilling feel to the game that I hadn't seen earlier.
Yeah, I haven't really had that opportunity to really explore and come across these kind of life-threatening things, but one thing I did find is that I was on my first go of this game, I was attacked by the Sentinels within like 5 minutes just for blowing up some tree or something. It was kind of intimidating to die so quickly, but I guess it was just a planet that was particularly hostile. I don't know.
Yeah, when you land on them, you always see the little thing in the corner about, okay, the Sentinels are hostile or not so hostile or whatever when you first hit there. So you kind of have an idea what to expect.
I think it was just the luck of the draw. Yeah, so here we are. I'm back in the hangar. What I've done here is I've redeemed the pre-order spaceship, which appears to have hyperdrive built in. So at this point, I seem to be sort of able to go wherever I want. But first thing what I'm going to do is there's that beacon. I don't know if you did the beacon.
One thing I'm noticing here about this, by the way, is it is very stutter-free on your Titan setup here. Because for me, it's like all these transition points. Like once you're on a planet walking around, it's not bad. But I get a lot of those lurches and stutters between areas. It's really distracting.
Yeah, we actually had a bit of a stutter there where I went into the
I saw
planetary
that,
atmosphere. Yeah, but generally speaking, I haven't really had any problems at all. But one thing to bear in mind, if you look at the GPU temperature there at the top, next to it is GPU utilization, and it's at like 70%. So 4K Max Titan X just canes this particular game. There's
clearly.
So I really kind of was hoping that the super sampling effect would work. Just to, you know, can I run this at 8K? That would be quite interesting.
Indeed.
But yeah, it does actually, the utilization does sort of vary a bit. To begin with, I was running with a full Titan X overclock here, but the GPU temperature was actually hitting like 90 degrees, so yeah, I pared it back to just like extra 50 on the core, and
probably smart.
The memory is still plus 700, so there's a lot of bandwidth there. But generally speaking, I reckon GTX 1080 could probably do a very similar job on this. But maybe that extra overhead is what's giving me the kind of glitch-free experience here, as you say, because I kind of expected more from your 970, to be honest.
Yeah, I will say the same. It definitely, it's quite playable, but all this stutters and weirdness, it's not great. The frame rate is fine, provided that's not happening.
Yeah.
And it's not like disk access or anything. It's
yeah.
And it's I wouldn't say it's a CPU issue either, because I'm clocked at like 4.2 gigahertz right now on the i7-5820K. So
yeah, well, you shouldn't really have any issues there at all, really. I'm going to be interested to see whether they sort out the sort of optimizations on this, because obviously a lot of guys are still having issues with it. Obviously, not everybody can afford a $1,200 GPU. So yeah, but you know, this is kind of like the game almost as it should be, and I haven't really had any performance issues at all. I've had a great time with it.
I'm actually really curious to see how this fares on some AMD cards, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to give that a go. I think Tom will be taking a look at 1060 versus 480 performance.
Oh, great.
So that'll be interesting to see, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether the sort of stuttering issues sort of remain here.
And being that it's OpenGL, I mean, that's that always seems to be a slightly difficult point for some new releases on AMD cards. So
well, it'll be interesting to see if that's still an issue, but hopefully not. But yeah, we're kind of reaching the end of the truncated gameplay here. This is where I actually get the blueprint for the hyperdrive, which isn't really required because I've already got one. But yeah, I think we're just going to leave this, and then I'm going to do a quick warp to the next system, and then that will kind of be it. But yeah, I think one thing about Tom's going to be doing also the graphics comparison with PS4. Obviously, like-for-like footage isn't going to be possible.
Sure.
But it seems to me that when he was boosting over the terrain in PS4, there was a lot of kind of bizarre fade-in on assets.
Yeah, pretty nasty stuff, actually.
Yeah, and it kind of looks much better on the PC there, so that's something I'm interested in. But the texture work is kind of weird because it looks fairly low resolution and with poor texture filtering on PS4, but it's not that great even on max settings on PC.
Yeah, I'm sure that's somehow related to the procedural nature of it all, and they're probably using some lower resolution textures stretched out over a large range with some detail textures slapped on top of that. It looks like something like that.
Yeah, quite possibly. Now this is the warp effect here. Now take a look at the frame rate here, 26 FPS I think kind of reached at its nadir, but it doesn't last for long. But again, you know, that's maybe really pushing it.
I think the fact that we're seeing that on a Titan X like this, in the particular PC you're using, is kind of troubling.
Yeah, I guess so, but we are 4K.
That's true.
But at the same time, there wasn't really that much happening on screen at that particular point. Anyway, I think we're going to be kind of reaching the end of this particular clip here. I think I just cut everything off once I hit the side of this space station and then somehow managed to dock regardless. But yeah, we're going to have more No Man's Sky PC coverage over the next couple of days, various comparisons in terms of visual effects with PS4, and of course some AMD versus Nvidia GPU comparisons there, so do look out for that. But in the meantime, well, thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. Take care.